Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, colleagues, depending on where you are. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Darcy Mukunwa, and I'm a consultant on nutrition for the Agri-PDB platform. On behalf of the Agri-PDB platform, I'm pleased to welcome you to this webinar on mainstreaming nutrition in public development banks, where we'll be talking about the entry points and the assessment tool called the NutrInvest tool by Gain. Today's session will explore how nutrition can be more effectively integrated into development finance and how public development banks can play a stronger role in shaping nutrition outcomes through their investments. So before we begin, I will just pass on a few quick housekeeping notes. This webinar is being recorded, and we will share the link to our channels, the YouTube channel and website, on the chat. And the session will be held in English, but we have interpretation in French and Spanish. You can access by clicking on the interpretation or the globe icon at the bottom of your screen. We will also have a Q&A session towards the end of the webinar, but we encourage you to share your thoughts, your questions, your comments in the chat throughout the session. And regarding the questions and comments, of course, we'll try to answer with the help of from our speakers to answer all the questions, but we'll give, of course, the priority to the questions and comments from representatives of the public development banks. And to officially open our today's session, it is my pleasure to invite Marco Camani, the lead global technical specialist on rural institution, to share the welcome remarks and to set the scene for our today's session. Welcome, Marco.
Thank you very much, Darcy, and good afternoon, good morning, good evening, everyone. So it's my pleasure really to give you a very quick opening from IFAD side. My name is Marco Camani. I work in the Production Market Institution Division as a lead global technical specialist for rural institution, but I'm also working with the Agri-PDB Platform team. So our team is pleased to host this webinar, which is our first nutrition focus session this year, which is building on the momentum that we created last year, where the platform began exploring nutrition through a series of webinars and a deeper engagement with global nutrition partners and investors. Nutrition is clearly a cross-cutting issue, which is at the heart of many sectors in which the PDBs, the public development banks, operate: agriculture, rural development, climate finance, and food systems. Through their investment, PDBs influence food environments, livelihoods, and ultimately human capital outcomes. PDBs collectively provide a substantial share, around 2/3, of global development finance, positioning them as critical actors in driving sustainable and inclusive development. So as the global attention increasingly turns towards transforming food systems, integrating nutrition into development finance, then this is no longer optional, it's mandatory, and represents both a responsibility and an opportunity for greater impact. At the same time, we recognize that many institutions are still exploring how to operationalize nutrition within their investment processes. Questions remain about what makes an investment nutrition sensitive, how nutrition fits within existing portfolios, and how to assess its impact in practical, implementable ways. So today's session is designed to help address some of these questions. So we are joined by a diverse group of participants. So we have PDBs, we have development finance institutions, multilateral development banks, and partners working across nutrition and food systems. This space is not only for learning, but also for sharing experiences, challenges, and perspectives from different regions. This reflects the core mission of the Agri-PDB platform, fostering peer learning while ensuring that the realities and voices of the PDBs inform global discussions and solutions. So in today's program, we hear first from La Banque Agricole of Senegal, which will share its experience and challenges in integrating nutrition. Then we from the IFAD nutrition team, who will present practical entry points across key investment areas, and from the Global Alliance for Improved Nutrition, who will introduce their N3F approach and the nutrition investment tool, demonstrating how it can be used to assess and strengthen the nutrition impact of investments. We hope this session provides practical insights and opens a discussion on how these approaches can be applied within your own institutions. So thank you for joining us. We look forward to a rich and engaging conversation. Many thanks.
Thank you so much, Marco, for your insightful opening remarks. As Marco highlighted, nutrition is a cross-cutting issue. It goes beyond the health sector, as many claim, and it's closely linked to investments across agriculture, food systems, and rural development. Today's session is structured to take us from the practical experience, as he mentioned, from the PDB, and now how to assess it with the NutrInvest investment tool. And we are pleased to be joined with excellent speakers. We have Alion Sedi, who is the monitoring and evaluation head at La Banque Agricole du Senegal. We have Dr. Beatrice Ekesa Onyango, the lead technical specialist of nutrition at IFAD. And we have Roberta Bove, the senior lead for innovation finance at GAIN. And of course, we are also joined by participants from the public development banks. We have DFIs around, we have IFAs, and partners working on nutrition globally from different regions. And before we transition to our first speaker, I would like to invite my colleague Anais to launch the first poll question that will help us understand where we stand as public development banks with regards to nutrition. The question is, does your institution currently integrate nutrition consideration into its investment? Please, I request the PDBs to
I see some have already answered, so this is great. Maybe we can wait a few more seconds, and I will end the poll and share the results.
Yes. One more minute, maybe.
Yeah.
I see many people have responded yes, but only in specific project or sectors, which is good. And no, nutrition is not currently considered, and not yet, but we are exploring. We like all the answers because that's why we are here with this webinar today.
Maybe I can share the results with everyone now. Okay, let me share. Hopefully now everyone can see the results.
Not yet. Yes, we can see that 50% have answered the second option, yes, but not specific project sectors. And 19% no, nutrition is not currently considered. 19% again, not yet, but we're exploring. And then only 12% said yes systematically. So we can maybe stop sharing, and we have to go straight to our first speaker. This question will help us as well later on during the session. And in upcoming sessions, we will now go to Alion Sedi from La Banque Agricole. And this intervention is particularly important to bring a real institutional perspective on how nutrition is currently being integrated within a public development bank and the current challenges faced. Monsieur Leon, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Darcy, and hi, everybody. I'm very pleased to share the experience of La Banque Agricole at Senegal on this nutrition aspect. First, to begin my speech, allow me to share with you maybe 2 points into our multi-sectoral strategical nutritional plan of Senegal. The first one of these points is the multi-sectoral approach. I think that in the beginning, speakers, somebody talked about it. In our multi-sectoral strategical plan for the nutrition, we mentioned that we need to diversify agriculture and food production. I just put it on the table to see how the La Banque Agricole deal with. In this point also, we have water sanitation and hygiene. It is an aspect mentioned in our nutritional plan. We have also the community-based approach. In these issues, they mentioned that we need to have a great women participation. It is very important if you are dealing with nutrition issues. And now I will try to share what we are doing at La Banque Agricole to reach these few elements in our nutritional plan. First, we have to know that La Banque Agricole is the financial arm of the state of Senegal in implementing its agricultural policy. We have very close to our government to see what is the strategy in the agricultural aspect and how we can deal with. We bring money to be sure that most of the elements planned in this strategy are well done on the field. That's why we are the leader in financing agriculture value chain. And we do a very important effort. If you come to Senegal, La Banque Agricole is the first bank financing the agricultural sector. And how it can be considered like nutritional issues, we are doing a lot of things in financing some kind of product like some cereal like rice, maize, millet, sorghum, fonio, etc. And also we have bringing a lot of finance in horticulture, like market gardening and also arboriculture. But also in the same line, we have doing a lot of effort in financing some groundnut, some agriculture like sesame, etc. It is an important point to mention because we are the first bank at Senegal financing this type of agriculture. The second point is financing processes activities. And that's why I mentioned in our strategical nutrition plan that women participation is very important. At La Banque Agricole, we bring a lot of finance for financing women groups, doing many kind of activities like infant flour, vegetable processing, and producing some oils like balanites oils and like also moringa oils. And it is very important if you want to deal with nutrition issues. The other thing is financing SMEs. Many SMEs in our country work on transformation, agricultural product transformation. And some of this product is specific for babies and for young women also, or for pregnant women. And we are dealing with these SMEs, allowing them to get to finance to be sure that their activity can be run properly. The other aspect is to developing many partnership with project and program, but just project and program including a nutritional component, because this project and program allow us to have some kind of organization, well organized, well trained, and we can bring the financing aspect in this size. And that's why when I see the question at the beginning of the webinar, most of the people say that our institution integrating nutrition financing just when we have a partnership with project and program, because at Senegal we have sometimes some specific project and program dealing on nutritional plan, and we have some kind of partnership, some kind of collaboration to be sure that we can bring the financing aspect need in this project and program, and to have some kind of good result in this size. And it is just a few points I want to share with the assistant, um, and to be sure that people can well understand and what we can do in the next step. Who can I can say as a challenge is to develop more specific and incentive-based financial product to be sure that we can promote positive discrimination in favor of nutritional actors, because we have doing some effort in this side, but we have to go more and to be sure that the financial instrument can be very specific and can encourage this kind of actors to do their activity and to be more strong. For example, we can try to have a kind of partnership, maybe with some partners, to be sure that we can work on concessional interest rate, to be sure that activities who take into account a nutritional aspect can have a concessional rate in our bank. And we can also try to deal with other kind of incentive like investment grant. It is a kind of incentive we can try to put in place to be sure that SMEs or organization, farmers organization, women organization can reach the financial resources in a more profitable way. It is a kind of reflection we have doing inside La Banque Agricole to be sure that we can integrate it, this kind of nutritional aspect into our financial issues. It is just what some point I want to share with everybody. And if you have some questions, I'm available. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Alion, for your valuable and practical insights. And thank you for sharing the journey of La Banque Agricole on nutrition. And we really commend LBA for advancing on nutrition and exploring what it means to invest in nutrition. You've highlighted the diversification, the WASH and women participation, and you've also shared the challenges on the financial instruments that include and favor nutrition, and also partnerships that are needed from all aspects. And I also encourage participants to share whether the similar challenges or different are happening in their PDBs. In the chat, it would also be good to know what's going on in the PDBs and how it's going on the aspect of nutrition. And before I move to the next speaker, I would like to take the second poll that will help us understand exactly, help us transition to the next speaker. In which areas do you see strongest link between your investments and nutrition? There is agricultural value chains, rural finance, food systems and infrastructure, climate and resilient investments, health sector, not sure. I see people are responding. We have already 94% choosing agriculture and value chains. We have 33 rural finance, we have 64% food system infrastructure. We have climate and resilience investments, we have health sector. I think this is also important to know. I like the not sure part as well, because some of us are not yet investing on nutrition, so it makes a sense. So I think we can end the poll, and now we turn to Dr. Beatrice Nyango from IFAD, who will help us understand the key entry points to make an investment nutrition sensitive and across all sorts of investment that we do here at IFAD and more. So Beatrice, over to you.
Thank you, Darcy, and thank you, the previous presenters, and thank you, Marco, for opening this webinar. Really looking forward to just sharing with other colleagues, especially in the area of financing, to see how best nutrition can be better integrated. Are you going to be presenting?
Yes, Anais, you're presenting?
Yes, okay.
Okay. Okay. Put it in PowerPoint. Good. No, thank you so much, Anais. Yeah, no, we found it important to just also get to share with all of us how we are approaching nutrition sensitive agriculture within IFAD, and just to also get a bigger understanding that it doesn't take a lot. It just takes creatively and consistent integration and systematic integration into what we do as IFAD, and that what can be done in terms of an investment. And I think we've had a very nice example from Senegal that we can actually align with. So we first wanted to really talk about nutrition and key concepts that are really of important for us to take note. What we know is that nutrition is about diets, not just the food quantity. You know, it's not just having enough to fill your stomach. It is having food that can, of course, fill your stomach, but also be able to provide your body with the needed enrichments, or rather needed nutrients for proper functioning, growth, and development. So it's not just feeling and feeling full after eating. So nutrition is actually ensuring that the diet is of the highest quality as possible. So it depends on the quality, the diversity, and the safety. So safety in that you don't just need to consume something that is rich in a particular nutrient, but is it safe? It has not been contaminated. Because if you have a nutrient-rich thing, but then it is contaminated, maybe through use of water that is not as clean as possible, then you end up not meeting the ultimate goal. Secondly, good nutrition requires adequate intake of both energy-giving foods and also the micronutrients. So this is not something technical. What you're talking about, it's about diversity, just emphasizing on the previous point that we mentioned. And then the other key important thing that we need to note is that when you talk about poor nutrition that results to malnutrition, it's not just when someone is thin or when you see someone's skin is not as good looking as it should be. It is about both undernutrition and overnutrition. And that is why it is not right to say that there are regions that have malnutrition and there are regions that do not have malnutrition. You'll find that the different forms of malnutrition, due to underweight, consuming less than is needed, or maybe due to overweight when you're consuming more of a particular nutrient, then all those becomes problems of nutrition that need to be addressed. And that is why you'll find there is malnutrition in very poor countries, but there's also malnutrition in countries that are very, very rich. The other key thing is that nutrition is influenced by multiple factors. And the previous speaker talked about multi-sector engagement. So nutrition is caused by so many things, and that is why when you are addressing it, we also need to work together from different sectors. The other important key is that good nutrition supports cognitive development, productivity, and economic growth. So it's not just about seeing a healthy person who is able to walk properly, talk properly, do other things properly, but good nutrition means that even your capacity in terms of mental and cognition is optimal. You can think properly, you can interpret things properly, you can put things into perspective. Why? Because your mental capacity has developed to the best possible way. And nutrition has a lot to do with that. Then it comes to productivity and then economic growth. Because if we have populations that are not well nourished, especially starting from when they are very, very young, these are children who will go to school, they'll not perform well. They'll not be able to get or to be productive in the society, whether they are getting jobs as employment or they're creating their own jobs to make a living. And then they become a big load to the population or to the economy. So then it becomes a ripple effect. Things cannot work as best as they are, both economically and also physically. Then the other thing that is important is that food environment shapes diet choices. Food environment is what do we have around us in the markets, in the farms, and in all the areas that we interact with, because we are enticed to pick what we have close to us. So if you can create environments that are more nutrient sensitive, that always look at foods that are healthy, then we end up having healthy populations. Next slide. So why is nutrition important for development finance? This goes back to what I mentioned earlier on. Its effect on economic growth, its effect on capital in terms of human capital, and its effects on productivity. If we have a population that is not optimal in terms of cognition, optimal in terms of performing the tasks that they need to do, we are going towards a trajectory that is not going to be able to meet the needs that we have, either as a community or even as a nation. So that is why nutrition matters in terms of development finance. And nutrition affects all groups along the lifespan. We have children, we have mothers, we have adolescents, and we even have adults. Not to mention even the old. Adult goes up to whatever age we are able to really be alive. So you find that if a mother is not well nourished, and especially mothers that are of reproductive age, they'll give birth to children that are not well nourished. The children will grow into adolescents that are not well nourished, and they'll end up being adults that are not as productive as they can. Then this ends up being a big burden to our financial sector, to our economic sector. So investing in nutrition makes total sense. Next slide. So these are just numbers to show us where we are in terms of nutrition and why we actually need to invest a lot in nutrition. You can see 2.6 billion people are unable to afford a healthy diet. A healthy diet is a diet that is able to nourish your body in the required way. 23% of children remain stunted. This means approximately if you put 10 children, if you randomly select 10 children, between 2 to 3 of them are stunted. When you mention stunting is when someone is short for their age. But it is not just about being short. When a child is short for their age, it means that also their mental capacity has been affected. Meaning that these children are already disadvantaged right from their childhood, and this will continue up to adulthood. We don't want to raise such kind of a population. Third, anemia in women of reproductive age shows improvement, but not in all regions. There are some regions that still this is a problem, meaning that women are not healthy enough to give birth to healthy children. And anemia is not just about producing a healthy child. Even the mother herself is at risk at delivery. We end up losing a number of women because they are anemic by the time they are having their children. Adult obesity. I talked about undernutrition and also overweight and obesity. Adult obesity is also rising, meaning that people end up being at risk of diseases such as cardiovascular diseases, blood pressure, diabetes, and things like that, which are a big risk as the population grows. We've also had data that informs that investing in nutrition has both economic and social development, and we'll get a lot of saving. You see, there's a return of $23 for every $1 spent. This is something that we've been hearing all along. What you need to do is take action so that this can come into reality. Next slide. So at IFAD, we look at nutrition from a nutrition-sensitive agricultural approach. And I'm going to quickly describe what we mean by this. This is the concept that expands the scope of agriculture food systems to a system that looks at elements right from inputs in terms of the planting materials, the fertilizers. How can we make sure that as we look at the planting materials that go into our farming system, can we select varieties that are more nutritious? Are there fertilizers that can fix the soil and end up enhancing the nutrition value of the crops that end up growing? Are there technologies that can actually make farming more better and more supportive to nutrition outcomes? Then secondly, we also go to production of food. How can we better produce? And these we are very, very keen as we put this into our investments. How can we produce food in a way that supports nutrition? First, we have selected the varieties that are more nutritious. Secondly, is there an opportunity for intercropping? Is there an opportunity for mixed production so that you can have both animals and crops in a more integrated way? Is there an opportunity for agroforestry so that you grow your crops, but then you maintain some trees that can also support nutrition, for instance, fruit trees or nut trees? It doesn't stop there. Food distribution and post-harvest handling. After the food has come from the farm, and maybe it is of a nutritious kind, we don't want to lose those nutrients. How can we make sure that the storage, transportation, processing is done in a way that we are able to retain or enhance the nutrient? And not just that, can we make sure that the food is also safe so that it has the nutrients, but it also doesn't cause disease and contamination after consumption? And there are several techniques that are put in place at this level. Then go to retailing. How is the food packaged? I'll give an example that I also gave a few weeks ago when I was talking about this. You could be looking at a crop such as orange fresh sweet potato. For those who've heard about this, orange fresh sweet potato or vitamin-rich cassava, you've processed and you have your nice product. But then during the marketing part, you decide to package it in a clear bag, and maybe the selling is done in an open air market. What happens is that this nutrient that you've been preserving ends up being lost because of exposure to light and exposure to heat. So those are some of the things that come into the aspect of marketing, packaging. Then the other aspect also labeling. Are we making sure that we support enterprises so that they can label products properly? We have had very nutritious products out there, but what you get is a good picture. You don't have information of actually what that product has. That is bringing nutrition sensitive up to the retail part. Then we move to even utilization and consumption. After the food has gone through all this process, can we make sure it is prepared in the best way so that the consumption leads to better nutrition outcomes? And that is a simple way of defining nutrition-sensitive agriculture. Next slide. So when you talk about nutrition-sensitive agriculture, I just wanted to make sure we remind ourselves what IFAD does and maybe what IFAD actually doesn't do. So nutrition-sensitive agriculture, as I mentioned, there is household access through both production and income, and I'll highlight on income. We work with projects whereby there is enhancement in terms of income. Communities are able to access more income. What we come in and do in nutrition sensitive way is, can we work with the community so that that income can be used to purchase foods that are more nutritious? So that the household can decide, I'm not going to buy a carbonated drink like Coke or Fanta, but I'm going to buy milk, something like that, or I'm going to buy an egg. So using income to also support nutrition is another key important pathway. So what we don't engage in is something around nutrition-specific approaches like maybe supplementation, you know, or development of nutrient-dense products that are based on, you know, highly processed ingredients and things like that. We look at nutrition from an agricultural perspective, considering food systems. That way we are addressing the underlying causes of malnutrition and making sure that the environment is an enabling one. Next slide. So I won't go into this a lot because it just highlights what I mentioned before. But what I want to talk about is that as we do nutrition sensitive agriculture, we don't just look at the value chains in terms of crops, fisheries, and livestock, which is very, very easy to think about nutrition. We also look at things like rural financing. How can that income be directed towards nutrition? We look at infrastructure. If the investment is about markets, building markets, can we make sure that then that provides an opportunity for nutritious foods to reach the community easily? What is the market going to serve? Is the market going to serve enhancing access to nutritious food? If an investment is about road or bridges, where is this road or the bridge going? Is it going at a strategic place that will enhance access to a number of aspects that support nutrition? Access to healthcare ends up supporting nutrition. Access to markets helps us supporting nutrition. Making sure that the farmers can take their produce to the market also gives them income to access other things. So we look at nutrition regardless the investment that IFAD is looking at. And there are a number of entry points. We have agrobiodiversity. We also take a keen interest in making sure that women empowerment and youth empowerment is part of what we do, and also incorporation of the indigenous people's food systems, so that we don't lose our agrobiodiversity. That is a key component. And some of the key outcomes especially is healthy diets. And in healthy diets, we want to know how is what we are doing enabling people to change the way they do at the different levels, production, post-harvest, and up to consumption. And then after they change what they do, what are the observed consumption patterns? So those are the key things we looked at in terms of indicators, but I don't need to go into the indicators that it can be very complicated. Next slide. So this is just a highlight. I hope when the presentation is shared, you can read through this. It just speaks to what I've been talking about. Next slide. So we also wanted to share a case study of how we've tried to do this. And this is the final part of this. We want to share a case study of a study that is a project that is happening in Nigeria. It's still happening, but towards completion. And this is a study that worked on, it's a project that really looked at how can we make sure that we are promoting climate resilient, nutrient-rich crops with a focus on cowpea, groundnut, soybean, millet, and sorghum. These are already nutrient-rich varieties. Then with a further narrow down to make sure that can we pick one of these crops and further develop it. That is why cowpea chain was able to actually, there was emphasis on making sure that the pesticide safety training to avoid even contamination with things like aflatoxin. These are very common contaminant when it comes to nuts and grains. And then to make sure that we also preserve the nutrition value. There was also a lot of investment in women-led agribusiness. And then there was a combined effort to make sure that there is behavior change communication to increase income and make sure that the income that is increasing translates to healthier dietary habits. So far, our reports indicate that around 1.2 million actually households have been reached with this. Actually, not 1.2, 2.982 households have been reached with this project. And 12,923 women have been trained on production practices and technologies that are nutrition sensitive. So this is just an example of what is happening out there, but we have several other things that are happening. But what I want to communicate to our agribusiness and financial institution is that it doesn't take a lot of money to integrate nutrition, as long as nutrition is well integrated within the investment that we are working with. Next slide. With that, we have 3 key takeaways. The first one is that nutrition is a multifaceted challenge requiring multifaceted solution. And that is why our previous speaker talked about multi-sector engagement. We need financiers, we need private sector, we need agriculture, we need health, we need education. Secondly, one size does not fit all in terms of nutrition. That is why you'll find that for IFAD investments,
Beatrice,
as
could you
much as we are
kindly wrap
mainstreaming
up?
nutrition, we are doing it and taking care of the context. Which country and where is it happening? And lastly, integrating nutrition does not mean making projects overly complex or costly. It strengthens impact and effectively enhances the productivity or the output of the work that we are engaging in. Thank you.
You're on mute, Darcy.
Thank you, Anais. Thank you, Beatrice, for your intervention. We'll surely share the PowerPoint. I know the participants will be able to see what you've been presenting in details, and you've helped us understand why. Now I will go straight to Roberta Bove from GAIN, who is going to now take us how the institutions can assess this in practice. Over to you, Roberta.
Thank you very much, Darcy. I'm just gonna, I don't know if Annie is sharing. I'm trying to share my screen otherwise. But,
okay.
oh, yeah. Wonderful. Thank you very much for sharing the screen, Annie, and thank you for having us. I'm gonna be try and be as brief as I can. I lead GAIN's work on innovative finance for nutrition, and I will be presenting on our nutritious food financing facility work, and my colleague, the NutrInvest, and my colleague Stella will cover our broader tool that's been developed based off the NutrInvest. So if we move to the next slide, please. For context, the NutrInvest, Nutritious Food Financing Facility, is the first nutritious fund in Africa that was launched with the objective to change the narrative from just food production to nutrition access, which is very much in line with what Beatrice was just talking about. As we know that the majority of agriculture funds have been focusing their investment mainly on export crops like coffee or cocoa, we saw a clear financing gap as there was no investment vehicle that was clearly targeting and focusing on nutrition. And that's why in December 2023, we launched the NutrInvest, which is an open-ended debt fund that has a blended finance structure within the fund itself, as well as with a sidecar of a technical assistance facility. And we started with $11.5 million, and we have 3 pillars within the NutrInvest. The first one is an impact debt fund that provides debt capital, a combination of working capital, short-term or longer-term capex for SMEs that produce and distribute safe and nutritious food across sub-Saharan Africa. A second pillar, which is a technical assistance facility that builds the capacity of the SMEs and enables them to continue to thrive as stronger businesses. And the third pillar, which is what brings us here today, which is a nutrition impact and learning pillar. Because ultimately for NutrInvest, the focus is to act as a proof of concept and demonstrate that nutrition is at the same time investable and impactful, therefore catalyzing more capital towards nutrition. Next slide, please. As the NutrInvest is a nutritious first fund, impact is not an afterthought, and it's been rather built into every stage of our investment process, from the initial eligibility assessment that builds on Gain's nutrition definition of food, and helps us identify which are the SMEs that really increase the availability, affordability, and accessibility of nutritious food for the local markets. Then we dive deeper during the diligence into our nutrition impact, and ultimately after the investment, during our monitoring phase, we look at assessing the nutrition impact of our SME investees. We look at way beyond the volumes of nutritious food produced. We go further, we try to estimate the consumers that have been reached. We look at the diet diversity, how those foods are influencing the diet diversity of the consumers, who in the household is eating what, how often, and we break that down in between gender. We disaggregate the data by age, trying to understand the impact on children as well. So if we look at that initial eligibility assessment, it's based on Gain definition of nutritious food. On the next slide, you'll find a QR code that actually leads to our paper that has the background on our definition. And what do we define as a nutritious food? We define the food that, for the person that consumes it, within the specific context, it provides beneficial nutrients and minimizes the potentially harmful elements. So based on this definition, what Gain has done, next slide please, it has built a stoplight system to categorize different type of foods, and enabling us at the NutrInvest to screen for which SMEs to actually support within our fund. We focus on the green, which are the good foods. They're high in nutritional values, and examples are leafy greens, pulses, legumes, milk, eggs. And we stay away from the bad foods, that are the red foods that we consider make a firm consider ineligible. And they're all the bad stuff like soda or anything like alcohol, breast milk, substitutes that have evidence of marketing violations and the likes. And then there's the middle ground where we have to pay a little bit more attention. There are the yellow foods that can be eligible depending on the context reviews. And those are foods that have they have source of nutrients. They can be healthy if they're consumed in appropriate quantities, but can be harmful if they were to be overconsumed. So those are the foods that can be highly valuable, especially given context where there's significant deficiencies. And these are examples like iodized salt or fortified cooking oil. Then there are the gray foods. The gray foods are foods that might have limited nutritional value. A good example here are starches or unfortified cereals. They're foods that very often are already highly consumed as a part of a diet, so therefore adding more won't really add to the diet diversity and to the addressing those macronutrient deficiencies. And so we consider them as gray. They're not directly eligible for funding, but it can be part of a broader portfolio of a company. And we might support a company that is intending us on fortifying those type of starches. And then there are the orange foods that are not eligible for direct funding as they have limited nutritional value, or they can be harmful because of their some of the ingredients or because of their processing. Good example here, it's highly processed meat. So if we look at where the opportunity is for investing to support safe and nutritious food, we see the opportunity throughout the food value chain, very much in line with what Beatrice was presenting before, all the way from inputs, production, processing, transport, and logistics, getting the food all the way to consumers. And the NutrInvest, in fact, invests across the food value chain with a focus on the middle part, mainly on production and processing. But the next slide is going to actually give you an idea of where our portfolio has been invested to date. So we've been operational for a little over 2 years. We've deployed half the capital. We've invested in 10 SMEs across 6 African countries. This slide is something I'm very excited about because it really shows the breadth of the opportunity. What can it look like to invest in nutrition? Looking at the input side, we have a company, it's a Zambian company that provides groundnuts and bean seeds to farmers. All the way at the downstream, we have a Rwandan company that provides cold rooms at farm gates and a market level for fruits and vegetables to reduce food losses and bring those fruits and vegetables for consumers at local markets. And then we have the middle, where we have a lot of organizations that focus on all the different types of nutritious food, from fortified flours and blends to dairy like milk and yogurt, fish. We have a tilapia company, and then some poultry organizations. And I'm now going to hand over to my colleague Stella. I was trying to be brief because I know we are getting a little bit over time. So over to Stella to talk to us about the NutrInvest tool.
Excellent. Thanks very much, Roberta, and thanks to everybody who's joining today. So as Roberta explained, the N3F is really a fund that has nutrition as a top priority. And through its operations since launching, it's demonstrated that it is feasible to apply rigorous nutrition-focused screening to select a real-world portfolio of SMEs that will improve nutrition. But we recognize the fact that most investors out there don't necessarily have nutrition as their first and overwhelming priority and don't necessarily have the same in-house expertise that GAIN and the N3F are able to apply. So we wanted to be able to take the tools and approaches that have been developed through the N3F and create something that could be useful for a wider set of investors. And that's where NutrInvest comes from. It provides a light touch screening option that's widely available to different actors and can be used in easy, practical ways to make nutrition portfolio screening easier. Next slide. So NutrInvest, or the Nutrition Lens Investing Tool, is based on work that was initiated by USAID and Wellspring, and then completed by GAIN and Wellspring after the end of USAID last year. And it aims to assist DFIs, funds, and donors to evaluate opportunities for nutrition impact when they're investing in different private sector firms, with the long-term goal of increasing the quality and volume of nutrition impact generated by the impact investing community by making sure that we're providing clear guidance on what constitutes a nutrition investment. So really, we're trying to increase the amount of investment that goes into nutrition while also ensuring that nutrition is defined and determined in a way that is really clear, accurate, and science-based, so that those investments will in fact lead to better nutrition outcomes. Since we launched the tool about 6 months ago, there have been over 120 assessments completed. And if you want to try it out, you can scan the QR code here, or you access the link that was shared in the chat. Next slide. NutrInvest considers really 3 main things. The first is the nutritional value of the portfolio. So basically, what foods are produced or otherwise supported by the company in question or companies in question, which outcomes are aimed to be achieved through the direct investment in the company, so the outcomes at the company level as a result of that investment. And finally, what is the target market or geography where those foods will be sold? Next slide. If you go to the website, this is what you'll see. It looks just like this on the landing page. And you'll see along the top that you can access resources which tell you a bit more about the framework behind the tool and also give more specific and detailed guidance on making nutrition-specific investments. Resources I think will be useful to many of you on the call. You can also access case studies of specific nutrition supporting companies that have been the focus of investments by funds, and more information on how the tool works. But if you want to play with it, to test what it would be like to assess something or to assess an actual investment you're considering, you can click on Start Investment. Next slide. When you do that, this is what the page will look like. And the first choice that you have to make is whether you're looking at just one single food product. That could also include an investment in a company that has multiple products, but where your investment is ring-fenced so that it will only focus on one product among many, or if you're looking at multiple food products. The distinction here is that if you're focusing just on a single food product, it's really important that that one food be highly nutritious. Whereas if you're investing in a company that has multiple food products, there's a bit of flexibility for some of their portfolio to be maybe not as nutritious, as long as a significant share of it is. Next slide. So here's an example. So I've selected an example company where it makes multiple food products. And you can see the next thing that I'm prompted to do is to input which are the different food products that the investment is directed at. I can choose up to 5. And for each of them, I need to input the approximate share of the company revenue that is derived from that product line. In this case, I've chosen a hypothetical example of a flour mill where the main thing that they make is unfortified refined wheat flour. 90% of their revenue comes from that. And then they have a small line of revenue, 10%, that comes from fortified flours. The next question will ask which outcomes are expected from the investment. In this case, we're investing in increased processing capacity, as well as more efficient distribution systems. And then next, it asks, who will the investment benefit? Who do you intend for it to benefit? And who will actually be consuming the products in question? In this case, you can see the options that I've selected. If I click on Calculate Result in the tool, you can see there the little pop-up window that will come up, which tells me that unfortunately this particular company does not qualify as a nutrition investment. In this case, that's not because of the outcomes. I've selected multiple beneficial outcomes that could lead to improved access to safe and nutritious food. And it's not because of the geography, because I've selected a focus on middle-income countries and have confirmed that most of the products in question will reach those in middle-income countries. But the challenge is with what the company is producing, because 90% of its revenue comes from unfortified refined flour. That's not necessarily something that we can't ever consume, but it's something that, as Roberta mentioned, most people in most places around the world are already consuming quite a lot of, and adding more of that to the diet, increasing access to it, is pretty unlikely to actually improve diet quality for many of them, making it not a very highly nutritious product that would qualify as a nutrition-sensitive investment. Next slide. Now, what if I looked at that same company, but they've put some work into growing their line of fortified flours, and now those fortified flours make up the vast majority of their production, 80%, whereas the unfortified flours are now only 20% of their portfolio. They come back to me for potential investment. I rerun through the tool, and you'll see this time I'll press Calculate Result, and I'll get a pop-up saying this qualifies as a nutrition investment, because now we see that the product portfolio is made up of more than 50% of considered nutritionally beneficial foods. Next slide. So that was just a really simple preview of what the tool can do, but please do go and check it out and test it. Just to sum up, we've seen through our experiences in the nutritious foods financing facility that we can use rigorous approaches in the real world to identify and make nutrition supporting investments as a top priority. But the NutrInvest tool translates that approach into a lighter touch, much easier to use tool that can be broadly applicable even for funds that do not have nutrition as their top priority. Next slide. Thanks very much for your attention, and also thanks very much for the different donors and partners that have supported this work. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you so much, Stella. Now I think we are running. We already 5 p.m. here, so we need to go straight to the questions and session. Please feel free to drop your question in the chat or raise your hand so that we can pick you. Allow us to have like 5 more minutes for the questions. Please, if you have any question for the speakers or you have a comment, we encourage PDBs especially to jump in. If you have any comment, question, please feel free to raise your hand.
I think there was one question from Alexandra Teixeira. She asked earlier during the presentation if we could please confirm whether the nutrition approach is included in the bank's policies in any way.
I think she was addressing that to Alionia, and Alion responded to that.
Oh, okay. Don't know.
Any other question? I know this is not especially for the tool, it is not enough time, but feel free to also use the link in the chat to go.
There's a question from Aditi Gupta. he asks, can this tool be applied to investments in financial institutions?
Sure, I can address that. So the tool itself is not directly applicable to a financial institution, but it could be applied in a couple different ways. One would be if you have visibility, sufficient visibility on the portfolio of that financial institution, kind of the firms that it's investing in, you could apply it at that level. Another approach would also be to provide capacity building to the invested in financial institutions to be able to use the tool to do their own portfolio screening on the companies in which they invest, while providing some guidance on kind of what share of the portfolio you would expect to be kind of meeting the nutrition sensitive criteria, understanding that probably most FIs won't necessarily have a fully nutrition supporting portfolio overall.
Thank you, Stella.
There's another question from Pius Mulekeno. Does N3F provide funding to PDBs that are investing on improved nutrition?
Better take that one. Thank you, Anna, and thank you for the question. So the way N3F is structured, it provides financing only directly to SMEs. So that's the current structure that we have for the fund. It is not able to invest in PDB.
More questions? You can as well raise your hand.
There's
Juan
actually...
Pablo Espinosa.
Yes.
Oh,
Hey, thank you, everyone. I'm from Senegal, Colombia. I have two questions. The first one would go to Stella, and it has to do with the tool. Is it sensitive to each country's like nutrition needs? You know, like some countries have like these specific needs in terms of nutrition. So what the firm that I'm assessing produces is nutrition sensitive for one country, but not for another. So that's my first question. And my second question, and this one goes specifically when they were talking about like, you know, like what does real nutrition is about. And I want to know if there is a way to measure like the nutrition gap for a country. For instance, like what are we producing and what are the needs of the population? And I know we can measure the needs of the population based on like, you know, the age of the people, the sex confirmation, and how are they distributed up like along the country. So if there is any way to measure this gap so that we know like what to focus our attention on. So those are my two questions.
Great, thanks very much, Juan Pablo. So on the first question, so the NutrInvest tool, one of the simplifications that we made in moving from the N3F approach to NutrInvest was kind of to remove that context specificity. I'd say that in probably 85% of the cases, what's healthy in one context is going to be healthy in another, and what's unhealthy in one context is going to be unhealthy in another. There is probably a 15-20% of potential foods there where the context does matter a bit. So that's a bit the example that Roberta mentioned with iodized salt and fortified cooking oil. Very nutritionally beneficial investments in context without a lot of non-communicable diseases related to diets, and with micronutrient deficiency problems, but not so positive in a context where you have the inverse, right? So the NutrInvest tool doesn't bring that context specificity. There would be ways to adapt it to bring that context specificity. But again, for most investments, I think that it will kind of be the same answer across different contexts. Now, in terms of how to assess kind of the gaps in diets, there are a few different ways to do this. One of these can kind of focus at the nutrient level. Some can look at kind of the nutrition outcomes level. What's probably the most practical as an approach for kind of investment is to look at the overall, what does the food supply look like? And what would the food supply need to look like if everybody in the country were eating a healthy diet in line with recommendations? There are ways to do that, and there have been some really interesting studies that have been done to apply it. In general, the vast majority of countries in the world do not have enough vegetables, fruits, and legumes, nuts, and seeds, but do have enough of the other key food groups to be able to meet their population needs. So there are different methods and analysis that can be done to kind of get more detail on that. Yeah.
There's one other question in the chat. On integrating nutrition into investments, how can one balance financial returns with nutritional impact, particularly in contexts where markets are underdeveloped?
Happy to take that question. So I think with the N3F from our side, the objective is right to prove that there isn't necessarily a trade-off, that nutrition is in fact investable, and loans can be repaid by companies. So we do see opportunities, and we've seen opportunities that are marketable within different value chains, within different points of the value chain. So from that perspective, we do believe that that's not necessarily a trade-off when it comes to, especially if we look at the SME part of the spectrum, because obviously if we look at it from a consumer perspective, if we're trying to reach very vulnerable groups, if we're trying to reach particularly conflict areas with fortified type of blends and emergency context, obviously from a consumer perspective, there is a need to reach those consumers at no price and to be able to support them. But when we look at it from an SME perspective, those SME will actually have clients that will take that cost. So from that perspective, the SME will have economics that are workable and that will allow it to operate in a market context in a way that doesn't have to necessarily make trade-off from that perspective, and that means that they are still able to repay an investments, and that's been one of the cases. We have a couple of companies in our portfolio that also reach those very hard contexts through emergency, through hospitals, through school feeding programs. So yeah, in brief, I think there's no trade-off at SME level.
Thank you so much,
Roberta. Sorry,
Yes.
I think there's a couple of questions you can still answer very quickly. How big is the N3F fund and the largest ticket size?
Thank you, Alessandra. I haven't seen those. The N3F fund right now, it's 11.5 million. We've deployed half of that. We're in the process of fundraising, and the ticket sizes vary from a minimum of $300,000 per investment up to 3 million.
I think we can close the Q&A session now. I know we still have many questions. Feel free to keep sending them to the chat. We'll make sure that we, together with our speakers, respond to the question and share you all the documentation used during this webinar. I will now welcome Alessandra Roversi, the program officer at the Swiss Development Agency and Corporation, to give us the concluding remarks. Over to you, Alessandra.
Thanks a lot. I'll keep it as brief as possible in view of time. Thanks for sticking around, everyone. So first of all, congratulations to Agri-PDB and all of the speakers to agree to basically pool our resources, our expertise, and our networks, because basically that is what is needed now to change the context of how much financing goes into nutritious food. I think we all have a role, and we also have a role as donor agencies, which I represent today. And we basically need a bit of a change of a mindset. At SDC, like many other donors, we're trying to go from grants to investment, basically to become able to unlock private capital, because our ODA size are quite small and are getting smaller, as you know. So I think we can really play a role as pioneers, as first movers, and we have invested in N3F, both financially but also in time. And I had the opportunity and the pleasure with Roberta and Stella and Gain and others to also work on shaping the fund, trying to understand how to invest in the SMEs, how to define the nutrition targets, how to assess and report the nutrition impact. And I think, as you mentioned, Roberta and Stella, basically the tool NutrInvest is also a result of this work together. So it's definitely a question of how much financial means we want to put in, but also how much time and resource. and bring together our competencies so that it's getting used by others. The second change of mindset, of course, that we all need to have is to move from the idea that these investments in nutrition are risky to they're actually opportunities. It's a bit of a perception. We actually have amazing growth industry in nutritious food. There is a huge need to get more funding into nutrition, and there's an appetite from consumers, and that's also where we can play a role as a government, as donors. As Beatrice very cleverly pointed out, it's also about shaping food environment. So yes, we can put a lot of more nutritious food in the market, but we also need to have consumers to be able to have the appetite and the affordability of the food that is healthy for them. So we also have this role to play in financing, in shaping funds, but also in shaping food environments with policy norms and regulation that actually ensure that this food that is being produced by pioneering companies is actually getting and reaching the right consumers. So all of this, I think, is extremely positive. We see a great movement from PDBs, from blended finance investors, from MDBs, getting more and more interested to understand how to capitalize on existing development funds and trying to blend these more cleverly to have multiple outcomes through agriculture, health, and different other energy sector, different sectors. So congratulations on the webinar, but also I hope that a lot of different PDBs will continue to ask questions, engage, use the tools, and see how we can make those tools even more usable. So thanks a lot, really, Agri-PDB, for this webinar and for the speakers, and looking forward to continuing those conversations.
Thank you so much, Alessandra. I would really like the PDBs to respond to this last poll to help us know how to frame our next webinar. And I know you've asked so many questions on the tool. We are willing to also invest to work with GAIN to explain more about the tool. And, if you're interested, the next question will be about the tool. If you're interested, please click that you are interested in learning more about the tool, and we will reach out to GAIN also for a more detailed session on the tool and how it can be useful to you PDBs. Yes, this question is about the challenges. This is also very important because, as you mentioned, we are not ending the nutrition journey. We are just actually beginning this. We are planning to have more webinars. So these are the challenges that we need to tackle together with the PDBs and partners to be able to invest on nutrition. I think we can go to the next question, Anais.
The two questions are appearing one after the other for everyone. Yes.
Yes.
I think 42%.
I see yes.
Yeah. Some people have already participated. Maybe you can wait a few more seconds and then end the poll.
Yeah, thank you so much for your responses, and thank you for coming. As Alessandra mentioned, we are continuing this discussion as a platform, and we thank our speakers, we thank the PDBs who attended, and the partners and investors in nutrition. Thank you so much for today. Have a great evening, and see you soon. We are planning to meet you soon. Thank you so much. Have a great evening, great morning, depending on where you are. And thank you to our speakers as well.
Thank you, everyone. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you. Goodbye.